Martin, thank you very much for meeting me in this secret location in North London. Can you tell the documentary.com viewers who you are, a little bit about your background, and a little bit about the current economic climate in the UK and the US at the moment?
Well, I used to be the East European project officer for the New Economics Foundation, and I used to teach economics. I'm currently a community worker. I have some knowledge of economic affairs, and presumably that's why you're interviewing me.
Yes.
The current climate is very unstable. We've recently had serious losses in stock markets all over the world. Central banks, including the Federal Reserve in the US, have been intervening strongly to prop up the markets. Effectively, what we've seen is a financial heart attack. The patient is still alive, but is still in intensive care. The reason for this is because of a speculative bubble that has built up as a result of policies adopted on both sides of the Atlantic. And I think the most important thing for people to realise at this moment is that without the state and the taxpayer, the financial markets would simply have collapsed. And I think that is the end of the magic of the market dream, which was brought to us by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and other people of that sort. I could go on but what else would you be interested in knowing?
Well, there has been a little bit of speculation as to some kind of financial collapse in the Financial Times and other financial-based publications. How bad is it likely to get?
In my opinion, it's likely to get very bad. The bubble that we've just seen is the biggest in history. It was very irresponsible to have allowed it to develop. It was done because it made some people extremely wealthy, and now the bill is going to have to be paid by ordinary people all over the world. I think we're going to have some very rough times, very similar to the 1930s and possibly like the 1940s. We already have a potential for a world war. I think it's a very serious moment, but it's also a moment of truth, if you like. The delusions are dropping like flies. We've all got to face the fact that the people in charge have messed it up, and there's going to have to be big changes.
Okay, so there's people sat at home at the moment in houses they can probably only just afford. Some people lucky enough to have fat bank accounts with money in there, thinking, oh, this is just scare tactics, scaremongering. How can you tell those people watching or listening that this isn't scaremongering, this is an inevitability about to happen?
I think what's been surprising for observers like me is how long this crash has been postponed. Whenever we've thought that it might come on, something else has come along to extend the boom. But the fact that the boom will end in a crash is not really in dispute. If you throw a ball up in the air, it will eventually come back down to the ground. And the fact is, the higher the ball has gone up in the air, the further it's got to fall when it comes down. If you look at the Dow Jones index, it hovered around 2,000 points for most of its history, from the 19th century until the late 80s, and it's now at 11,000, 12,000 points. It's got to come back to its long-term historical average, which means a very big crash indeed in numerical terms.
How hard is this going to affect somebody like myself? Am I going to come crashing to the ground and lose everything?
I think people all over the world are going to lose jobs, they're going to lose houses, they're going to lose pensions, they're going to lose healthcare. In poorer countries, the situation will be even more dramatic. People will die of starvation. And of course, all of the conflicts that are raging around the planet will be intensified. When the cake is shrinking, people fight that much harder to control whatever bit of it they've got. It's not a pleasant prospect. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Any optimistic points that you can make? I mean, I guess we were in this situation not long after the war, World War II anyway, were we not? And we've somehow managed to crawl back to some kind of security, if albeit on the edge.
Yes. And many of the mechanisms for balancing the economy, which were put in place at the end of the Second World War, have been deliberately dismantled by a following generation of politicians who were believing in the magic of the market. Yeah, that was stupid. What we've got to do is get back to some common sense and re-regulate a lot of what goes on in markets. But I think we've turned a corner intellectually, in the sense that nobody who is a magic market person can stand up with a straight face now and say that they know what they're talking about, because it's quite obvious, with the central banks chucking taxpayers' money down the throats of speculators, that the market has failed and the government has already stepped in to help them out. So that's a big change, because they said previously, before this happened, that they didn't need any help from anybody and they were fine. But they're not fine, are they?
Well, thanks very much for talking to me. What advice would you give finally? What can we do?
I think as this crisis develops, it's very important that people band together collectively in their communities, in their workplaces, in places of education, or wherever it is they meet and meet others. And we must make collective demands of the system that it should be put back on a decent footing, where the livelihoods of people at the bottom of the pile are the priority, not lining the pockets of the people at the top of the pile.